Happy Saturday, Risers. We hope you are all having a phenomenal weekend. Sagar and I are back with some of our favorite moments from the week.
In early April, 72% of adults said that they would take a coronavirus vaccine if available. Now that number has fallen to only 51%.
Senior editor with the Morning Consult, Matt Bracken, joined us earlier this week to discuss why some adults are unwilling to get that vaccine and how that all breaks down along party lines.
During the beginning of the pandemic, we saw strong majorities across all different groups, political parties, people of all geographic regions, different income levels, basically every demographic cohort that you could come up with. Strong majorities supporting the possibility of taking a vaccine if one were to become available. Then, kind of as the pandemic dragged on, we got into late April. Those declines started to be more apparent. Then it was relatively stable over the summer, and then we saw a new dip in August. And that, I think, can be traced a little bit more clearly to partisan leanings. We've seen Democrats in particular take a big dive over the past month, and that's when you saw the president, for example, promising a vaccine multiple times, possibly before the election, certainly before the end of the year. And Democrats, beginning of the year, they were at 81% in terms of those who said they would get a vaccine if one became available. Now it's dropped all the way down to 53%.
Yikes. Yeah, this is just one other awesome looming crisis that we're tracking here. And there's always been a sizable chunk, actually, of Republicans who've said they won't get the vaccine. You have more libertarians. You have, I think, more sort of science skepticism in general on that side of the aisle. The thing that has really changed is with Trump messing around with the CDC and with the FDA just this week. He pushed back on the new guidelines they were trying to publish. It's completely undermined trust among Democrats also in getting the vaccine. So just like masks are now some stupid partisan issue, like vaccines are turning into this stupid partisan issue, and we're never going to get out of this thing if we don't have a vaccine that people actually trust and get for themselves and their children.
Yeah, and it's really, this is where public leadership matters more than anything else. Don't undermine trust in a vaccine. And right now, a lot of people just don't trust institutions, and I don't blame them. I really don't. But you should not fan those flames, either left or right, and I think that's the main issue.
Yeah, it's a disaster. Jobless Americans in more than 21 states are receiving an additional $300 in unemployment benefits weekly under an executive order by President Trump, but that funding is largely coming to an end.
So earlier this week, Washington Post economics reporter Jeffrey Stein, he joined us to discuss that, failed stimulus talks, and record unemployment numbers. Let's take a listen.
There's actually been an increase in unemployment claims in each of the last 3 weeks consecutively. And you pair that with new data we got from Yelp, showing a continued surge in the number of small businesses that are permanently closing. That number has actually not really fallen at all at any point in the last 6 months. It's continued to go up. 100,000 small businesses permanently closing now. That's going to ripple throughout the economy. You were talking restaurants, hotels, other small businesses particularly reliant on customers who are there in person, movie theaters, that kind of thing. So we're seeing the permanent scarring of huge sectors of the American economy at a time when federal support is either evaporating, as you mentioned, or very unlikely to arrive. Talks on Capitol Hill have broken down. We can get into that, but it's really not looking good.
Jeff is such a great reporter on this. We've relied on him throughout this crisis, and just on a personal, he seems really sad. I think this stuff is weighing on him because he actually is speaking to people who are suffering. He's actually looking at the numbers. And it's insanely abhorrent that here we are, unemployment numbers going back up again, right? Yes, we have the eviction moratorium, but rent is still going to come due. You are just forestalling a potential massive homelessness and eviction crisis. And lawmakers are nowhere close to having any kind of anything done. And remember, sending out direct checks, just sending everybody a check is an 80% issue. Okay. It's something that President Trump said he wanted, that the Democrats said they wanted, and some few Republicans also said they wanted, and yet Nothing.
It really is just so, it's just so terrible. And yeah, I mean, it just puts it into perspective that so many people are just being left behind. 30 million people unemployed. The job loss continues to tick up, actually. It's holding steady around 880,000 a week. Think about that. 880,000 new unemployment claims per week. You're going to create a permanent underclass in America if we don't fix something or fix something quickly. And nobody looks like they want to.
You're going to enlarge the already existing permanent underclass in America. Yeah. The era of emancipation expansion in the U.S. demanded a direct political attack on the power of the Supreme Court. Now, some are calling on the left to take note of Abraham Lincoln, who challenged the power and supremacy of the judiciary system.
Jacobin contributor Matt Karp, he joined us to explain how the Democrats can learn from the past to prepare for the upcoming Supreme Court battle.
In the historical example, I mean, the essence of what Republicans were most concerned with was this idea that that an unelected judiciary could decide a political question that should be decided by the people. And the appropriate outlet to decide political questions are the representatives of the people, that namely, especially in Congress. I think there are a lot of parallels in some ways between the 1850s and today, in the sense that the anti-slavery forces in that moment felt they had a very clear popular majority that they had awakened in opposition to slavery, that the overall majority of the country, stood against the rule of the slave power, the extension of slavery into the West, and the domination of the federal government by slaveholders and their allies. And yet they had so little, and the only branch they controlled at different points in the 1850s was the House of Representatives.
So I actually didn't know all of this history, and this is wildly simplifying what happened. But essentially, after the Dred Scott decision by the Supreme Court, which said no black American could be a citizen, Abraham Lincoln was just like, okay, well, I don't care. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to move forward as if that didn't happen. And the remarkable thing to remember is that it's not written into the Constitution the way that the Supreme Court operates today, or the number of justices, as has been pointed out. But it's really interesting to remember that point in time and what Lincoln's approach was when the court basically rendered a decision that was itself wildly unconstitutional.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. The Dred Scott history is so fascinating because what happened is the Southern justices on the court wanted to they were like, let's solve the question for all time.
Right.
Let's just strike, we'll make it slavery is legal everywhere. We'll destroy the Missouri Compromise, all these delicate compromises that, one free state, slave state, Kansas, Nebraska, all of that kind of kept the delicate power. It overreached so much so that it drove the then Republican Party to say, you know what? Screw this. We're not abiding by it. And they explicitly ran on a platform against it. And then through popular sovereignty, basically came in and were like, no, we're not going to implement this stuff, which is what precipitated the breakup of the United States. So very interesting to think back upon how that all happened. I think the main thing I liked about his point was judges shouldn't be this powerful in the first place.
That's it.
Judicial supremacy should not rule the way that it has right now, and that we need to reassert more of our democracy.
Yeah, and part of the problem is that legislators like it that way, because it lets them off the hook.
Yeah.
All right, that does it for us. We'll be back later today with the week that was in media screw-ups.
Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our videos. Don't forget to like and share as well. And tomorrow, we're going to be back for another round of #RisingQs. We'll see you guys then.
Have a great day, guys.